Hello and welcome to Monarchist Minute, bringing you royalist news today in the US of A. I'm William Stout, along with Charles York and John Arness. Today we're going to talk about Chinese aggression, a treaty with the Australians, and Schrodinger's traitor, General Milley, and the fallout of the issues that have come about as a result of a panicked phone call. So, basically, the story behind this goes that prior to the January 6th incident, General Milley was very concerned about the mental state of former President Donald Trump. At least he claims to be. This is completely coming from his perspective and what he claimed. He was worried about the mental state of the president. President Trump himself has said he thinks Milley is insane for actually doing what he did. But basically, Milley got together with some generals and other high-ranking officers and made a contingency plan in the event that Trump were to absolutely go ballistic in a state of denial about the aftermath of the election and do something very, very, very impulsive and disastrous. How the military would very quietly handle the situation. Not necessarily in a coup, but more like slowly gag the president. Apparently, I'm cutting it out. How much have you guys heard?
I heard a decent bit.
We get the gist, but it is sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's fine.
That's all right. It's like I think Always Sunny in Philadelphia quote says like, if I play both sides, then I always win. I think that's a good way to describe Milley. It seems like he's obviously he was in bed with Trump up until he was selected to do his job. And it's very clear that now that Trump has left office and it's popular to bash him, it's kind of the cool thing to do. So, of course, Milley gets on the bandwagon of of all the things that one does to bash Trump. And now he's talking about how he had to commit treason to keep Trump from committing treason, and oh my god, yeah, I don't even know how to respond to that.
And to basically not beat around the bush anymore, he called a top general in China to let them know that, God forbid anything happened with Trump, there would not be a military response with the Chinese.
Oh my god.
You know, it's just, I don't know. I assume that from a certain extent, given that our first president was one of our greatest military heroes, that the military high command has always somewhat been involved in politics. But I find it hard to imagine that, Eisenhower and Patton and Bradley, well, Bradley and Patton really didn't like each other, but all these World War II generals getting together and saying, I'm a little unsure about this Truman guy and how he plans to use the bomb. Let's come up with some contingency plan and get on the phone with the Soviets. I just,
My god.
I can't see that.
We are living in a very weird political world. Like, it's very surreal. Like, and there's always been kind of like a undercover type element to the military, but now it's just like the military is straight up politicized. And like when you would hear things about like the CIA and stuff like that doing stuff behind the president's back, it was always seen in a negative light. But now, when a person currently serving the president, openly, well, not during his presidency, but after his presidency, basically said that I stopped the president from doing what he needed to do the job. it just blows my mind because now it's public. It is a public declaration that I was a traitor, or at least I saw myself as a traitor because he used the wording. He said the words "I am a traitor," I believe, or I had to be a traitor in order to do this certain thing, and I'm like, what? Like, how does one? How does that happen? How is that okay? I don't know. I mean,
He took an oath, you know,
yeah.
and he took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. Um, and moreover, well, I think that it is ultimately speaking the job of a soldier to serve and, if necessary, save his country.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I don't know. I don't think that it almost sort of feels like, and once again, I was not in the final days of the Trump administration. Okay,
Mm.
maybe President Trump had silently gone off his rocker. I don't think that publicly, given how he's acted since. I don't think that's what happened, right? But let's hypothetically speaking, President Trump may have gone off his rocker. Okay, so I could understand maybe having that sort of contingency doesn't justify, calling up the Chinese, even if President Trump had gone off his rocker.
Why
But
would
you don't
like?
make that public. That's not. You do not inspire confidence in the military high command that they are just going to coup the elected government by saying, "Yeah, we have this contingency plan."
And I almost guarantee that isn't laid out in the Constitution. That you can just like throw out a president just because I don't know.
Yeah,
First Balloon does have something to say about the
yeah,
topic.
yeah, and we will invite him to speak now.
He has inside knowledge about it. I kind of have indirect knowledge about it through my father, but we have a person who served, I imagine. You there, Darth?
Turn up your volume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess while waiting for Darth's mic, our I don't know. I have no faith in the military high command. I have no faith. You know what? I would have been like, if things got bad, um, if things got bad, then totally, I would like an Eisenhower sort of guy to coup the government if things really got that bad.
Like if things get that bad, what needs to happen is you need to have an impeachment that isn't political or isn't like, which it was. Both impeachments were political. If he was doing something actually wrong and like objectively wrong, that the evidence was substantial enough to commit the Republican Party to turn their, then it should have been worked out through that way, not a coup.
Well, no,
Like,
what I meant that if the entire republic, like
Mhm.
federal structure, had
Yeah.
gotten to the point where the entire thing was
Oh, yeah.
acting completely unconstitutionally and against the interests of the American people, which it kind of already is, um, then a military coup might be justified under that context because the Constitution, the Second Amendment, is essentially the only contingency if the government goes bad, but it kind of leaves the military hand tied because there's no article in the Constitution that says, yeah, if the feds are acting up, and it turns out this Constitution doesn't actually work, then your oaths are absolved and do what you need to do to save the country. There's
Well,
nothing like that in there.
kind of like I guess that's implied for the Declaration of Independence, but it needs to be a founding out of a universal want, or in my personal opinion, it needs to define what is a just uprising, and I think it needs to be of the people. That uprising, it can be supported by the military, of course, and you got to think most of the military, or all of the military, are citizens. So, you know, is the military going to prioritize? And this is ultimately the base, the base thing that needs to happen. Is the military going to prioritize the well-being of the people over the orders that they're presented? And sadly, we've seen that a lot in American history, where I believe it was Douglas MacArthur rolling a tank over a few veterans, and because they were marching. It's happened before, and now it's so political that the military isn't supporting the people; it's supporting the party or the political ideology behind a certain party, and that's heavily, especially if you have a coup as it happens now. The ideal would be not a revolution. I guess it'd be a revolution, but an overthrowing, supported by the military indirectly, and that means that the military is among many who publicly and populously demands a change in government. I don't like the idea of solely the military, just the military doing anything, if that makes any sense. And,
I mean, I don't know.
Mark Milley just saying that I had to commit treason just because he didn't like what the president was doing is heavily suspect. And as far as the coup goes, I suppose it could be multifaceted, but as far as just our current military, unfeeling of the whims of the people, just doing whatever they want isn't the best way for me to be convinced about their loyalty to the nation when they're doing this, which is sad.
Yeah,
if I could get off topic for a moment, can we talk about how crummy of an excuse he had for committing treason? It's like, I had to commit treason and contact our biggest rival because our president might have been a little bit off his rocker.
What is the official reason?
And Robert E. Lee committing treason because he didn't want to fight his own home state.
it's
what is
know. I feel out of depth here, so hopefully Darth's mic is fixed.
So it was.
Oh, we can kind of hear you. Hold on.
Is he almost good?
We heard you for a second.
Oh man.
Hopefully
if just type it in the chat, your opinions, and I can go ahead and read it if need be.
Yeah, maybe by episode 10. Okay, maybe by episode 10. You got Stalin with his 5-year plan. I got my 10-episode plan. We're gonna have one episode where there are no major technical problems, where everybody sounds consistent, where everybody, when they speak, their mics don't go wrong.
Well, I mean,
it
being kind of like an open mic show, more or less. At least for the audience, you're going to run into those problems. But I don't think we've had a huge problem with the people putting it on. Like, Williams cut out a few times, but I think we're good.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Air Force
Star's 5-year plans were unrealistic. Why can't my expectations
Yeah.
be unrealistic?
Yeah.
Anyways, I guess back to
yeah, I'll be looking for darts and
yeah, he's typing right now.
yeah. But it is, what was the reason for, what was the specific reason that Mark Milley did this? Because I still don't know. Like, is there any good reason?
He was predominantly scared that a mentally unstable Trump had access to the nuclear missile codes.
Oh,
was there anything to prove that he was unstable aside from a political outlook? Like, I mean, he was Trump, therefore he was deranged.
We just have this whole eyewitness testimony about Trump being his sore loser mood after the election and his whole denying that Biden won, which everyone's allowed to have their own opinion about that. Honestly, I
Yeah,
don't
I mean,
care at this point.
I don't think there should be like a hard set, like, okay, you have to believe this. If you don't believe this, you're not, you know, the and of course they make the claim that, it's treasonous to think that something went wrong or something happened that shouldn't have
Say
happened.
the same people that whined and pouted and made all kinds of incredible spectacle when Trump won in 2016.
Well, here's my question though, and I guess this is more to you guys than just to thin air. Is
Mhm.
it inherently treasonous to have plans? Now, I'm not sure if it's treasonous, but the phone call, I'm not making any excuses for a phone call. But hypothetically, at least always in the back of your mind, having contingency plans if things go south, right? Is
Mhm.
that in of itself inherently treasonous? I'm not defending the phone call to the Chinese. I think that was stupid. I'm not defending him publicizing this. That was also stupid. But
What
is it inherently wrong to have those contingency plans in your head?
I I mean, obviously, when we're dealing with like, oh, what's in the person's head, I mean, whatever goes on in your head is fine as long as you don't act upon it. Um, I guess you could have a contingency plan about a certain thing, but acting upon it and not like the fact that he had this contingency plan in his head and then proceeded to act upon it for some stupid reason because Trump in his fourth year of office and you being selected by him to lead the military, and then all of a sudden you getting up one morning and saying, oh, wait, I'm scared that this guy that's had the nuclear codes for 4 years now is
Hasn't done anything.
nuke the planet. It's nonsense. Like, I don't get it. I just don't. Unless you just have a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome, I don't get the fact that you can just I just don't get it. I don't get it.
I mean, is Milley still the head of the armed forces currently, or
I
still the
I
top tip?
wouldn't at all.
Yeah,
I
I don't
would
know. I think it's him. And
he's
since
not, I mean, let's be honest, he's not gonna get in trouble for this. He's not.
yeah, I mean, why would he?
Yeah.
I mean, we live in a culture where, of all the mainstream media outlets, how many of the anchors and people do you legitimately think voted for former President Trump? I mean, we live in a
Okay, I think there's okay.
Oh,
Here is Darth Balloon's response. The problem with the military is the junior enlisted are encouraged to be degenerates and not to question the NCOs over you. NCOs are conditioned to not care about any political motivations and embrace lots of nihilistic traits. Subconsciously, we know it is wrong, but we are discharged if we voice concerns. In today's army, no one earns stars. They are given out by Congress to those they deem to be part of the state religion of liberalism. They are are very rarely today we have a merit-based officer corps. Lots of appointments are political by nature, which is why they will sack an enlisted or junior officer, but not touch anyone above lieutenant colonel.
that admittedly, from my
I
outsider
agree.
perspective, makes sense. It's
I
just
agree with a good chunk of that because didn't we hear like a person that called out his superiors and was immediately essentially discharged for like calling for accountability for like Afghanistan. So I mean, there's outside evidence of that. So it completely makes sense that is the mindset of a lot of a lot of military now. Even my dad, who's a 20-year vet, doesn't want me or any of his kids to go in the military because of how disgusting it is.
Yeah,
It's shameful.
if you talked to me a year ago, I guess, or maybe around there, I would have said I wanted to join the Navy, right? Because of all the branches of the armed forces, that was the branch that I loved as a kid. I remember watching Battle 360, USS Enterprise. About honestly one of America's greatest ships. She deserves to be right up there with Constitution, but and Missouri and whatnot. And it's like the fact that firstly, there's the ethical issue of me taking an oath to defend a constitution that I don't necessarily believe in. I'll happily take an oath to defend the country, but this constitution, which has produced in recent decades not the most stellar results. But secondly, the fact that I am serving, even though I would be defending the country, I'm also done serving a regime that is promoting that in essence is promoting everything I despise. You know, um, and I guess and the fact that I will all the people who would be in the lower ranks with me, yeah, we're all going to be buddies or whatnot. But then the fact that I'm taking orders from people who, if I wasn't below them, would probably be screaming at them on Reddit. Which 0 out of 10. Do not recommend getting into arguments on Reddit. Please don't. It will waste hours of your life.
I purposely got into an argument on r/politics, but I haven't responded to anything. I'm probably getting dislike bomb there, but I have the karma to spare, so it's fine. But I don't get in direct conflicts on Reddit because it is, in no alternative terms, a cesspool.
Yeah, I mean,
I once got into an argument with someone on Reddit about the ethics of growing people in tubes.
Huh. Reddit moment.
What will happen? I don't know how it even happened, but
yeah, Reddit arguments. I know this is off topic, but Reddit, on the one hand, is such a great place because you can find communities. About I have a community for VHS. It's good to know that there are people who are like me. And it's good to there's hope for the world that there's a VHS community. But then on the other hand, you'll get into an argument when you make a statement that you didn't mean to start an argument, and then you get 90 day ban from Lord of the Rings for upholding Catholic teaching on homosexuality.
That's funny.
I love it. I love it when you get banned from a subreddit that's based off the works of a Catholic author for promoting Catholic teaching.
And then you put it out doing it. That's fun. That's funny.
The thing about Reddit is it has a community for everything, and that is both a great thing and a problem because since there's a community for everything, there is a echo chamber for everything. So you eventually have a bunch of these uppity, egotistical, self-insured. I'm trying very hard not to describe anything without breaking Rule 1 and cursing. But you guys are getting what I'm saying. You have all these egotistical smarty pantses out running around thinking that they know everything. And
the only political subreddit that I respect, even though it's an echo chamber, because they're all echo chambers, is Political Compass memes, because it is an echo chamber for both the left and the right, and a lot of orange lib left bashing, which I can get behind.
Yeah. That ironically, that's the least political like subreddit I've seen. Even r/politics, because r/politics is supposed to be, at least from my own personal thought process, it's supposed to be like even-handed, like news. Like, we're gonna give you the news, and we're not going to make it about politics. Well, it's gonna be about politics, but like like a certain perspective of politics. So like liberal politics. So like if you're just talking about like, oh, so and so won an election or so and so lost an election, that's fine. But when you're saying Trump again is an idiot, or like so and so who was skeptical of the vaccine got COVID, or so and so is doing this or doing that, it's just a salt mine, in my opinion now.
And going back to the oath thing that I made, Dark Kaluna's also typed. Also, an oath taken under a regime that doesn't care about the nation is an invalid oath. Most of us in the army don't believe the oath we take. Don't believe the oath we take to most of us, except the neocon soldiers in the ranks. Ugh, neocons. At least from from most of my units I've been in. If I asked if you had to take an oath to a piece of paper or to a great man, 9 out of 10 unintentionally answered the great man. Only a few saw through the question and said to the piece of paper to not show disloyalty. Many people in the army are subconsciously are monarchists by nature and hate petty politics. I guess at
There's
Yeah.
the end of the day,
very comforting in that statement.
yeah, I mean, I just when I look at the lower ranks of the army, and if we kind of did a role reversal where the officer corps, where the officer corps reflects the lower rank, and once again, this is completely this is just completely from my outsider perspective. I am not a military man. My military family record is my mom's cousin, who I think technically also counts as my cousin. I don't know. You'd have to ask my uncle, who's the family genealogy expert. Was in the Navy. I think he was on the Kitty Hawk around the time of the fire. I'm not sure if he was on board during the famous Kitty Hawk fire.
Mhm.
And then I had another like great grand uncle who died in France shortly after the armistice, and I don't know what happened there, but whatever.
Yeah.
But so from my complete admittedly outsider perspective, if in the officer corps had the I guess attitude of what I perceive to be the standard rank and file army, rank and file army men, then I would say that the military would be in a much better shape. But then again, I mean, when you have a regime that is trying to advance these specific policy goals, you know, abroad, like militarily speaking, the military is going to have to be involved with those policy goals to a certain
Mhm.
degree. Like the military had, like you can't build the liberal democracy in Afghanistan without using the military to do that. And if the military inherently disagrees with that, if the military high command disagrees with that, they're not going to just follow your orders. And if they
Mhm.
are, they're going to do it in such a way that will end up backfiring. Right? So the military high command by definition has to align politically with the government, the way that our system is currently set up.
Yep. I mean, conflict of interest is a hell of a thing. I don't know if that's a curse word, but
I mean, my strict and I don't know. I don't like calling myself a Puritan because I'm a papist and Puritans make me sad. But I mean, I'm pretty puritanical when it comes to words like that.
I usually say if it is in the Bible, it's not a curse word. But I, I just conflict of interest is something that can destroy plans and that's what you end up having when you have multi-presidential wars. And that's what happened in Vietnam, and that's also what happened in Afghanistan, or Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, it's when you have multi-presidential, conflicts, you're going to deal with some problems, and that's probably why Truman wanted to wrap World War II up. You know, just say, hey, okay, we're done here, wrap it up.
Now,
it creates a conflict of interest. And I kind of agree with what Darth was saying about, like, we would much rather follow a person rather than a constitution. Now, I think constitutions are great and all. They lay out things that, they codify a lot of, needed things to be codified. But at the end of the day, you don't need to have an oath to the Constitution. But what does that Constitution codify? What does it codify? It codifies the country. And if the country is divided by politics, and if the country has no solid figurehead in anything, there's no one guy that, you honestly believe represents the country, the one woman that represents the country. In other words, a political, or not necessarily political, but a governmental symbol, you're just going to be fighting the same war. You're just not going to feel anything. Like, the military just becomes, like Darth said, nihilistic, because it goes nowhere. Conflict of interest is rampant, depending on the president you have in office. There's no consistent chain of government, directions when it comes to. Now, you might have multi-generational, like multi-election cycle, the Democrats or Republicans, but at the end of the day, even them have no real connection. Sometimes they do, but most of the time it's like, I'm just a different flavor of something like that. It's a lot different when, okay, I am the child of the former leader. I am the child of the former king or the former queen. I flow directly from them. And, like an old soldier who fought for my father now fights for me. That's something powerful. And we just don't have that. It's like, oh, my work partner, my vice president. Are you excited to vote for my vice president? Hi, Barack Obama here. Are you excited to vote for Joe Biden?
He wasn't excited to vote for Joe Biden.
Like, that's the problem. And, before a constitution or anything, you need to, who does that constitution give legitimacy to, or not legitimacy, but what does that constitution codify? If it codifies a monarchy, and that monarchy is a strong one, and one that's both and of course the constitution needs to be, have some divine favor. If that means, like, it's just, if it's passed by a few religious people, and they say, okay, that's good, then in my mind it has some degree of divine right flowing directly into the monarch. And it's a good monarchy, and the monarchy's laid out, and all the systems of government are laid out. It would be a much better, system. And they're saying, okay, we're in the military. I'm ready to fight and die for my king. And, my king, is a descendant of the king that came before him, or the queen that came before him. And my forefathers died for that king, or fought for that king. It's so much more powerful.
You have a history. And this is something that we as Americans don't understand, because we don't. I mean, our country is, just partly because it's so new, and partly because we never really experienced this as an independent country, because we orphaned ourselves, basically. But there's a history there that you are tied, and your family's tied to a land and to a crown, and that even though you may have personally never met the king, right? And the king, doesn't even necessarily know you exist, because he governs millions of subjects. You and he share this connection that is deeper than just we're both the same countrymen. The idea that my fathers served you, and your fathers, through ruling us, served us, because being a monarch, like as we're reminded with our elected politicians in gov class, being a politician is hypothetically a form of service, right? Because
Yeah.
being, you're supposed to serve the people. Um, you know, and we don't have that, and it's sad because I don't I don't like. I mean, don't get me wrong. The bonds that countrymen share, are very strong, right? I have more in common with any random American than I do with, say, a Canadian, right? Even though politically speaking, I may agree more with, one of those conservatives, still fighting the good fight in Quebec. I may agree more with that particular Quebecois on things, and we might both be Catholic, and which is more important, and we might both be this and that. At the end of the day, as much as we agree on things, he's a Quebecois and I'm an American, right? Don't get me wrong. The bonds that countrymen share is important, but this sort of perennial rulership and this perennial service, this mutual service, isn't something that Republic has. And I
Well,
mean,
it does have it. It's kind of like almost like it's almost like moving into or staying in kind of an adopted, like a foster home or something like that. It's more of like that, where like we don't really like we're orphans. We kind of like move from foster house to foster house every 4 years, and we just kind of feel lost because we move to one house, and the parent, the set of parents that are there, they might be very strict, and in this case a vice president or president, or they might do something that you just hate, or they might, god forbid, abuse you or something like that. And then you move to another house and they just don't care about you. They're just kind of like, oh, do whatever. They might leave the door unlocked when they go somewhere because whatever. They might just neglect you, and it just bounces. And then you might get a good one for 4 years, but that was only 4 years. And they might be able to keep you for a little bit longer, but they can only keep you for 8 years. So, good luck, I guess. Like, and we're just in a perpetual cycle like that. Instead of living in a family or like being led by a person who has spent their life caring for you and spent all of their being preparing to care for you, it's just a different, it's just a whole different thing. And I think that's what normally would bring us together, but it doesn't, because we're just kind of like half-handed, like half-baked. We're a half-baked monarchy, in a word. We're
Republic is letting like 10-year-olds and below stay at home and letting them decide among themselves how they're going to do things.
and then
Uh,
having yeah,
and the
and then
parents are just
yeah,
except the
and
parents didn't just leave the house. We booted the
yeah,
parents out of the house and locked the door.
like having a foster parent there that's just kind of like, you guys are the real parents of this household or something like that. And they'll just leave every 4 years, so we don't really care about them. Or when we do care about them, we really hate them. And once we get a new one, we'll either half the house loves him and half the house hates him, and it just tears the house apart. And then of course we get to be the ones that decide, of course, as children, because it's our god-given right to say who's our parent and who's not our parent. Because I guess, I don't know.
I mean, monarchy, and this is, I'm reading Aristotle's Politics. It's a bit of a slow read because I'm a little out of the practice of reading, but and this is something that I had known before it. Monarchy, when he describes the relationship between father ruling over his children, he describes it as royal.
Mm-hmm.
And the Aristotle says that the family is like the smallest I think the term used in this translation was community.
Mhm.
And monarchy is just a natural extension of that.
Yeah, yeah, and like being a student of history and being like a study of history, I've seen that the earliest like city states emerged from a family structure. We don't get kings just because it was this forced hierarchy that we had on ourselves. It came from elders, or more of a loose type of monarchy, or how we would perceive monarchy, more of a loose type of monarchy, like city states. The eldest person would hand off the title of the wisest elder to his child, or something like that. It always expanded from maybe not a family, but a family within a town. And as the town grew, people would see that person, say it's the count or something, or like the village elder, as the person that everyone goes to, and that expanded into being millions of people underneath a monarchy, which is completely like it's a complete smooth progression to that.
It's
It was natural. We fell into it almost because it was instinctive for us to fall into it.
Mm. and instead of like okay, let's build up rules and like guidelines to say, what if we have a bad elder? Well, okay, we have rules so that the elder can go away, and then we can get the elder's son, or maybe the elder's, or if the whole family's bad, get a new family or something like that. But we, at the advent of the republic, we went, okay, so the king, we might have had one or two bad kings. Let's just stop being a family, or let's just break down the family, or something like that. Let's just reinvent the wheel entirely, so none of that matters, or completely destabilize the country, which is by nature more of like a family. It sprouts from the family if you go back far enough, and let's just rip that out and make it one guy who leads temporarily for 4 years, and when he dies, some random guy or some random girl comes and she's the leader now, or he's the leader now, instead of having you know you know in my opinion, constitutions are made for when stuff goes south, or when things need to be objectively delineated, or like, okay, what defines treason, or what defines probable impeachment of a monarch or a president? Go to the Constitution. It's more of like a sort of commandment type thing, and that's what I see it. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. It's more of a vessel that divine right pours through, as opposed to something that's put on a pedestal and kind of worshipped. And yeah,
I mean, I would argue um, that Constitution. Okay, that's all very well and good, but
Mhm.
for thousands of years, um, the common law, and this is more of an Anglosphere concept, but I think that before other countries, I think that in the history of Europe, other countries had this sort of similar thing. But the common law was supposed to be rooted in the eternal, right? So even though there might not have been a statute saying specifically, the punishment for this is this, right? There over precedent that was supposed to be rooted in
Yeah,
a
when that's
moral.
specific, you don't really need, stuff being laid out.
Well, yeah, but the fact that for for centuries we got along without constitutions because it was very simple. You had a king, and by the grace of God, that all worldly authority within the kingdom was his. and that power would, for the sake of simplicity, partly due to tradition and partly due to efficiency, the king would diffuse that power to local nobles and to towns. The famous free cities of the Holy Roman Empire, for example. Um, and all that power would be diffused, but ultimately it was his, and that was the setup. That was what, and it worked. And once again, I am not a philosophy major or whatever. I intend to read more philosophy, but it
Mhm.
seems that Aristotle's Politics, from what little I've read thus far, I'm only started like book 2, which in my edition is like not even to page 100 yet. Um, it seems that when he's describing what the ideal state would be, I think he even says specifically, like, unlike Plato and his Republic, I'm going to actually try to come up with something that like works
Mm.
within the natural realm. Um, but with the Enlightenment, I think that a lot of these ideas transition from more what is how we work, and transition to this is the nice hypothetical ideal, even though it has no basis in reality whatsoever. Once again, I could be wrong, because I am on that sort of like scale of knowledge to how confident you are in the subject. I'm sort of somewhere in between I know nothing and I know nothing to I know a little, so therefore I think I know everything.
Hmm. I very, as a person that studied history, I well am aware that I know really nothing. That's always the mindset that I usually have on a subject. I could always learn more of the subject, but from my knowledge, from what I have gathered in my so amount of time studying it, it usually modern history, at least when it doesn't involve democracy or stuff like that. Just if you're just looking at stuff like technology and um, it's less violent per se. Now that doesn't mean that there isn't any violence and I think with the stuff that you know the modern age has invented that's good, and the stuff that history has brought, such as the family and all this stuff. I think that what we have is a good opportunity to fuse what worked in the past and support it and fortify it with what we have in the modern era. And I think with a monarchy, that would essentially, it wouldn't make the perfect system of government, because we can never have truly the perfect system of government, but it would come as close in my mind as humans can get currently. I being a classic, kind of a classic semi-constitutionalist, I guess. I kind of see the Constitution as it exists as kind of like a set of guidelines, just to keep everything from, just to simplify everything in the different, okay, this is how this works. It's almost like a dictionary of sorts. It's a guideline that you look at, and you kind of, I'm kind of like a Hamiltonian when it comes to that. I do respect the Bill of Rights and stuff, but it's more of like a guideline to say, okay, the king is messing up bad. How do we know that the king's messing up bad, aside from like what we think? Because we might look to the mob of people outside of the palace and say he must be doing something bad. But then we look to the Constitution and says, oh wait, what dictates a proper impeachment? Oh wait, he has to commit a high crime, or you know put an act of essentially treason when it comes to betraying the American people, or betraying the whatever nationality. It's like, oh, is he a tyrant? And that can be fleshed out, but it's it's I don't see it as kind of like, I don't worship it. I don't see it as kind of like a constitutional monarchist or a constitutional Republican would. I see it as kind of like this thing is complicated, and what is the gauge, or what is the kind of the gauge of like who's going wrong or what's going wrong. You go to the Constitution and look in it and say, okay, that makes sense. That's all I kind of like when I look at a Constitution. I see, and it would make sense going back to what Darth Galoon said, and I believe he said something else. Let's see. This is his most recent thing that he stated. The officers are mostly the true believer are only the true believer and actually thought American democracy was the universal. It was fun watching them see the Taliban sweep in with no resistance because it shattered their perception of the world based on Enlightenment lies. I consulted many of them, hinting we could restore the king and have gotten a long time ago. My first sergeant reluctantly agreed, and my commanding officer avoided answering. So, yeah, that's what he just said.
Not to derail this amazing conversation, but we're getting a little crunch
Yeah,
on here.
we're rubbing up on. I mean, do we want to start on Chinese aggression? I mean, I gotta pop out soon, but I can get my on it before I head out.
I mean, Chinese aggression kind of just tied in with Milley, and
Yeah, we didn't really get.
the only thing really to be said about that is China has been emboldened primarily because of Milley's folly and thinking that the U.S. is weak right now, and rumor has it that China plans on sailing ships near Guam, Hawaii, and even as far as the Caribbean.
Jesus. Oh my gosh.
Oh. Completely up to me, I would introduce them to Atlantis, but that's not the case.
All while Biden is just incapacitated in the White House.
It is a day.
We can't. I mean, what do you expect? I mean, the thing is that we can't even internally act as a cohesive country anymore, and we expect to stand up to the Red Menace. I mean, 1948 America. You know, we were all united. You know, House on American Activities.
Yeah,
Committee.
that was what historians like to call the liberal consensus. Not liberal, but like liberal as in American value consensus. Because it was the one point in time where we acted truly as a decent nation would act. You know, in all honesty, a monarchy would act, where we're not focused on political differences or anything like that. We're more so focused on bettering the nation and being a family within the nation, as opposed to kind of these two butting ends of kind of like an antler meeting where it's just headbutting each other. That's what we're at now. But it was at one point where we won a huge victory and we were kind of united, or during the war we were united, and we don't have that anymore.
I mean, it is the fact. The fact of the matter is that America today is not united in any sense, and I don't. If the Chinese did a Pearl Harbor, if the Chinese did a Pearl Harbor, I feel like half the media would be like, it's unfair to say this attack came from China. They just acted in ways that directly led to it. I don't know. That's kind of stealing from a John Doyle video, but
our fault that it happened.
Yeah,
we should have done that, or we should have done this or that, or they would dogpile behind Biden and kind of and say, oh, Biden will take care of it, or Biden will do this type of stuff. And then they would find a way to kind of make this Trump's fault, like that it happened, or generally Republicans' fault, that y'all antagonize them, or y'all antagonize the Chinese, so now it's your fault that the Chinese have done this, or something like that. I mean, a part of me wants to believe that we will come together like we did in World War II and actually wake up from this, or like what we did in 9/11. But I don't see it happening. I'm
And
kind of
to
difference between what I hope and what I see happening, and there's very little that convinces me that Americans would put aside their differences long enough to fight a war with China.
to what we said last week, it's horrific that in order for this country to unite and get anything done, people have to die first.
Yeah, and sadly, um, say what you want about wars before the advent of democracy, but kind of in the last couple centuries, republicanism has thrived off war. Has thrived off war. Now, there's been statistically more wars that have happened in history that have been monarchies, but those monarchies haven't needed the war to boost their economy or boost their nation as a whole. Like many of them do it for, say there's a land dispute, or there's, a war for, a crusade going on, or there's a border dispute, or, you have land that I want, or something like that. Most of our wars have happened because we have needed to support our economy overseas, or we've wanted to expand our capital overseas. Not capital as in government, but capital as in our economy. Or we just needed a reason to unite the people, maybe away from what we wanted to happen, or we wanted them to, think, or, we guide with war. We kind of use war as a bludgeon to say, "Hey, over here, look over here. Hey guys, look over here. We're united," and stuff like that. Uh, a republic, by and large, has a lot more to gain going to war, at least in the modern context. Because in the old days, a lot more things had to happen in war as opposed to diplomacy. Now diplomacy is a lot more prevalent because we have faster communication. We can hammer out peace deals. We can hammer out agreements a lot faster, and that's just that can be easily explained by the advances in technology, and we're more civilized in a way. We have more technological advances, so of course there's going to be less wars. We have things like international UN, in spite of it being an incredibly wasteful and useless organization, sometimes it does good, you know. Uh, so there's less, and what does that mean? Are there less wars because we have democracy? No, because we have less wars across the planet, and some of the planet isn't uh, doesn't prescribe to democracy. So what's going on here? Um, why isn't the absolute monarchies of the Middle East going to war all the time? Or why any of that's not happening? Because we, by and large, live in a more civilized modern world, but the correlation between a less warfaring world and the lack of monarchies does not equal causation. That because we are a democracy centric world currently, that we have less wars. That's what a lot of people will say. Oh, we have less wars because we don't have monarchies anymore. Oh, we have less wars because we're more liberal minded. That's not true. We're better at diplomacy now than we ever have been, because you can react to a situation instantly now, almost instantly, practically, and we've never had that before. So it's a big difference between what passes for what is the idea behind everything. Um, I've actually got a get here in a little bit. So,
See you around, John.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that normally this is the part where we'd ask questions, but I think that this is a good place to just round out. Um, I guess um, all I would say is that our country, um, I love it. Um, and I can't. I just it's gotten to the point where I can't stand to see it like this anymore. Um,
yeah, I agree.
I mean, I guess anybody who's politically active, they are politically active because they want to see change because they see there's a problem with your country and they want to fix it.
Gonna, I 100% agree with that. I'm gonna go ahead and let William finish this out. And I'll see you guys around.
This has become a very grim and depressing episode. And I want to leave us off by saying, under no circumstances should anyone here consider this hopeless. Our country is a lost cause, or that it's not worth saving. It is, and I do believe truly that there isn't a cause more worthy than our own and more just than our own to try and save that of which we have grown in, our country that we love, and everyone in it. And as long as I'm still breathing, I'm not willing to give up on it.
Yeah. And I think that now we can close in prayer. And I guess when we pray, we usually the same prayer over and over again. We have a tendency to just glaze past the words, but I guess really listen to the words of the Our Father, because I guess that will help you get through a day. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen.